And good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on this CyberArk and Set Solutions Endpoint Privilege Manager webinar / lunch and learn. My name is Michael Farnham, CTO with Set Solutions, and want to get this kicked off today by saying first, thank you to CyberArk for joining us. And then we'll do a little bit of housekeeping here. So we've got, you should be, if you register for this, you should have gotten a gift card for lunch. We have had a few people who said that went into their spam folder, so please check your spam folder to make sure that's not in there. If you don't see that there, please get with Lauren and she'll get you connected. She should be the one that's, you should have her invite information or her contact information, and she'll get you connected with that. Also, at the end of this, as usual, we've got a questionnaire that we'll be sending out. Along with the link to the video and all the other resources. Please, if you can, answer that questionnaire. That gives us some good information on how we can improve. And if you're interested in talking to us further on what we talk about today, also enters you into a drawing for a $100 gift card. So that's not a bad little drawing to do to get involved in. So please, if you sign up for that, answer those questions. During the presentation today by Brett and Mike, we will have a Q&A panel available for you. I'll be monitoring the Q&A and the chat. So if you want to ask questions throughout the day or throughout the session, please do. And we'll either do those at the end. We might do them in the middle. It just kind of depends on what the timing is. But at the very least, we'll answer your questions at the end of the session. So without further ado, let me introduce Mike Roths and Brett Wire. Mike Roths is a SE over at CyberArk, and Brett Wire is a Senior Solutions Architect over here at Set Solutions. They will be talking about all things Endpoint Privilege Management, anything to do with that. So guys, take it away.
Will do. Thank you, Michael. And we're going to go ahead and just hit this agenda real quick. And what we're going to discuss is, what is administrative access, and what's the risk, right? Also, just not what the risk, but think about it in maybe a broader scope of the operational impact, right? What does it take to do this? Okay. How can a privilege management solution fit into the defense in-depth program? And then lastly, what are some of the challenges and benefits, okay, around having an endpoint solution? Some of them are going to be obvious, some are going to be less obvious, and we're going to try to hit all these topics during this hour. And then I'm going to wrap it up with a small demo and use case demonstration. Now, Brett, did you want to go ahead and talk, kind of go down the local admin and root level rights?
Yeah, that'd be great. So I would like to start by kind of making a point of clarification. And the reason why I do this is I find that customers, and in many cases, my coworkers, quite honestly, confuse endpoint privilege management with password vaulting. So just to set a baseline here, we're not talking about password vaulting where, let's say you have an administrative account that you've stored away and you can pull it out for a fire call where the password is managed, that sort of thing. That's not what we're discussing today. What we're discussing is when you provide end users with local administrative rights, or God level rights, and there are a lot of different ways to do that. One example probably that most of us run into in the industry is you have a VIP that simply says, I need to be able to install iTunes on my laptop or whatever. And they have the clout within the organization to go ahead and do that. Another example might be, and I think as security professionals, we tend to think of the administrators of, say, the desktops as maybe being lazy or incompetent and solving problems just by bypassing security entirely and granting the user administrative rights just to solve the problem rather than actually getting to the root cause. But those aside, there can also be a legitimate business reason to do it as well. I've seen numerous customers where they have legacy applications, or for that matter, in-house written applications that are poorly behaved, and they actually require administrative rights to run. So all of these things can translate into a situation where you do need administrative level rights, and kind of our hands are tied with the solutions that are built into the operating system, where pretty much you're handing them the keys of the kingdom, at least as far as their workstation is concerned. And Mike, it's not just Windows, is it? It's Linux and Mac OS too.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the great thing about Endpoint Privilege Manager is we do support Macs. We hear a lot about that. And so quite frankly, where a lot of these use cases around Macs kind of come in, at least from my personal experience with POCs, are around developers, right? Nobody ever wants to get on the bad side of anybody. Brett's example of, of folks that are in the corporate company that, quote unquote, want access or need access, or I'm so-and-so and I should have this. Quite frankly, security needs to be maintained across everybody. Okay. Nobody gets a special ticket. Okay. And so what we find is, and from Forrester, from our own surveys at CyberArk, is that I'm shaking my head, because after all these years, you think we'd have this least privilege model whipped, but we still find 80% of the folks aren't doing it. Okay. And so what we see then is some of the problems that folks run into, as an administrator, right? There are certain things we could definitely do on our systems. And some of these are, quite frankly, they're downside. There's a huge downside to it. Installing and starting services, disabling antivirus. Raise your hand if you've had a slow laptop and the first thing you did was stop the antivirus. Those are the kind of things we want to stop. And quite frankly, installing malware takes that admin right to do. Now, an interesting stat, and quite frankly, I'm a huge believer in it, is that, and my slide's on auto, I guess, is, just by removing that local admin right, I can stop 90 to 95% of the malware. Okay. Brett, any ideas about that? Any thoughts? What have you seen on your end?
I mean, I came from the customer side of things. I really only got into sales a couple of years ago. From the customer side of things for 30 plus years. And it was, quite frankly, I even had local admin rights because we didn't have a good solution. And we saw numerous instances, and your example is really good, of developers who needed local admin rights in order to build their development environment. And we had situations where a developer brought something in from home, plugged it in, a USB stick, and actually deployed a virus that got out. So yeah, that is a huge issue.
Yeah, and so what we're running up against then is, I'm going to just kind of run through this real quick, because I wanted to highlight something here as well. And I said this before, is that again, these organizations have a movement. Now, the percentage has changed, but again, it's depending on what survey you're looking at. And so when I start talking to folks about endpoint, least privilege, removing that local admin right, Brett runs into this, I run into this, I'm sure Michael does as well, is explaining it, right? Because, when we talk about this, sometimes it goes down that vault route, okay? So I kind of have a simple slide here to kind of describe it, but really it's I don't want to say common sense, but it's common sense. What do we do in our house, right? We shut that front door. That's basic security, okay? Well, that's kind of the same thing with moving local admin rights. We want to close that front door, and quite frankly, when we have these conversations around endpoint, unfortunately, and that's why we're having this education session here, is I hear, oh, I have an EDR, okay? Fabulous tools. Your CrowdStrikes, your Carbon Blacks. Matter of fact, CyberArk is coming out with an integration for some of these, okay? They serve a purpose, going back to that defense in depth idea and thought. I also hear we have next-gen antiviruses, okay? Again, great, but they're not removing that local admin right. They're not doing the simple and basic things like shutting the front door, okay? And so we want to go ahead and do those basic things to really ensure that least privilege model on the workstation, Brent.
And you bring up defense in depth, and that's a really good point. I think most of us understand the concept of a layered defense, where you don't just have one solution. Actually, one of my favorite examples is data protection. You can put a DLP product at the edge, but that's not going to catch everything. You have to put different mechanisms in different places. The same thing applies to endpoint. You can't just solve your malware issue by just putting an anti-malware product on your endpoint. There's other points where where malware can get into your organization. And we all have to remember that at the end of the day, the weakest link in a defense in depth and a cybersecurity deployment is going to be your end user. When you hand them the keys to the kingdom, you've basically opened that door that Mike is talking about by saying, hey, here you go, you can do anything you want. And that includes sticking a USB stick in their machine that they brought from home that their kid may have installed some malware on, unbeknownst to them.
Exactly. And so another way to illustrate this, because you're going to notice we've illustrated it here, but then, again, to kind of drive the point home, okay? And again, why at least I harp on this a little bit is when, again, talking to customers, it's, hey, I have an EDR, I have next-gen antivirus. And quite frankly, if you're a Gartner subscriber, okay, if you try to find this, I'll call it genre for lack of a better word, you won't. These solutions, Endpoint Privilege Manager gets lumped in with the PAM solutions, okay? So that's another reason if you're looking for, hey, I want to see where it stacks on Gartner, of course, I get it, right? We want to go ahead and we want the best things for our companies, right? We want to be the most protected. And so it's hard to actually extract these type of solutions out, okay? Because they do get mixed in with your EDRs, configuration management. And really, again, what we're trying to go ahead and hit is that creamy, gooey, soft underbelly and protect those admin credentials. And by just flat out removing them, okay, it goes a long way in flattening that risk on the workstation.
So, it's great that we're sitting here talking about removing local admin rights, and I'm sure there are some benefits that we'll get into, but at the end of the day, okay, fine. So I have, I've got directors, I've got VPs, I've got the C-suite that has local admin rights. At a minimum, I'm going to have to get an executive on board to be able to push this politically. It's extremely complex. We have, customers have dozens and dozens of applications that are going to be impacted by this. There's going to be the entire testing and validation process. There's deployment management of the agent. We're going to have to train our users. There's going to be a huge help desk ticket load. I mean, this represents an enormous investment from a corporate perspective, both in people and time, and really culture capital, if you will. What are the benefits?
Exactly. So again, we want to be able to go ahead and lock those endpoints down, secure them, but yet we are going to need to go ahead and grant access back in a way that, quite frankly, doesn't inhibit the end users, right? And that's kind of the dilemma. And so with Endpoint Privilege Manager, we're going to be able to go ahead and do that. Again, if you've tried to roll out a least privilege model, remove that local administrator, right? Well, I'm sure you've gotten I don't want to say hundreds of calls, but I'm sure you've upset a lot of people, okay? So we want to go ahead and nip that in the bud, but yet we still need to maintain that level of security on that endpoint. And so why I'm showing this slide is, well, quite frankly, out of all those reasons not to, okay? Something that gets missed, something that, well, Gartner did a survey, but we also did an internal survey at CyberArk, okay? I don't know if you've done it. I'm embarrassed to say that I've done it, where I've tried to install some software and it's still running, and I'm going to take it into my own hands, and I'm going to go into the registry. Why? I have access.
Right.
Okay. No. And I'm starting pulling stuff out, and I'm trying to get this big bird's nest fixed. Guess what I've done? Now I have a call to help desk, doing the walk of shame. Yeah, my PC doesn't really work anymore because I tried to do X, Y, or Z. Okay, and that's the complaint. That's the problem. But guess what? If I have Endpoint Privilege Manager on there, if I'm reducing what they can do on the workstation, I'm not getting those calls. Okay,
Right.
so we're actually seeing a cost save.
Yeah, you prevented them from even installing that software at first. So you've enforced a standard image. You have created a situation where all of the machines are consistent, and you can then be selected about what you allow the users to do and what you don't allow the users to do.
Exactly. And so, what we've been able to find with CyberArk labs, and we've been doing this for a while. It's kind of a bold statement, and we like to be a little conservative here at CyberArk, right? But we've been able to go ahead and test. We test over 2,000 ransomware samples a day. Now I'm going to pause. Now, Brett, if you have something to chime in, please do.
Yep.
But we've been really talking about least privilege, removing local administrator, right? Where does ransomware run? In the user space. Okay, a little harder to protect. Okay, I want my users to download iTunes, maybe. I want them to have, an enjoyable work experience, but that is a huge gap. Okay, and so we've been hitting least privilege, removing local admins, but Endpoint Privilege Manager is also then able to go ahead and secure that user space and that application control as well. And so, with configuring Endpoint Privilege Manager correctly, that means a combination of removing admin rights, application control, our ransomware and credential theft enabled, we've been able to block 100% of ransomware that CyberArk Labs has come across. And we've sampled entirely, since they've been doing this, over 2 million strands.
Wow.
So Michael, do we have any questions? Anybody chiming in?
No, you're keeping them engaged, but nobody's got any questions yet.
So
okay.
I guess before we get into the demo, maybe we could touch on one of the challenges that I've run into with customers in the past was, okay, great. I realize that I need to take away local admin rights, but we've got software that the customers need to be able to install, or we want customers to be able to install software from this share or from this vendor, or I need customers to be able to install a printer driver. I mean, what are the sorts of things that CyberArk can actually give the customer to make that administrative load easier and yet still protect them?
Great question. So the idea is we need to be able to go ahead and grant some of these tasks, right, back to the customer. And so what we have the idea is of policies, right? So we can get very granular on what we're allowing the end user to do. Now, when we first start talking about this, it sounds like perhaps a laborious task, okay? However, through my rollouts, implementations, and proof of concepts I've done with customers, the way we go ahead and approach this is we have the ability to go ahead and, well, quite frankly, if you have local admin today, we're going to give you what looks like, and I can do my air quotes because I'm on the camera now, is what looks like a local admin. Okay, so the idea is we're going to go ahead and learn the behavior of your end users. What are they running? What do they need, right? Why is Sally in HR going into her network properties? Is something wrong with her NIC, right? I mean, is there another problem in there? And so what we're able to do then is intelligently create policies based on what your end users are doing, okay? So if done correctly, okay, I'm able to go ahead, remove local admin, right? EPM is going to come in, run that task for them. And if Sally, for some reason, has to go into the network properties, then by all means, if we're okay with that, let's let her do it. We're not going to put a pop-up in her face. We're not going to inhibit her. She is going to look and feel like, hey, I'm still local admin on my box, okay?
But
The other laborious task that, go ahead.
So, I mean, okay, so I go in and take away her local admin rights. How do I know what she's doing? I mean, if she tries to do something, she's going to get blocked. If I do that across my whole organization, I'm going to get tons of help desk tickets. How can CyberArk help me in that respect?
Great. So again, we're going to be able to take those events that we're getting created that are coming into EPM, right? We're watching all this. We're collecting all this information, okay? One, I could go ahead and then create those policies. We also have integrations with ticketing systems, right? So for example, if it is something really legit or something she needs, we can send that off, create a case for it, and we can create a policy. Two, if it is a well-known application throughout the environment, right? Then we can start leveraging what we call our trusted sources. The idea is if I'm a Microsoft shop, maybe I'm using certain dev tools for my development group, right? Well, we know that. We know that's safe, okay? So let's go ahead and trust that publisher, right? The idea is to get these large things trusted, right? So then the idea is when I'm coming back to my EPM console, Endpoint Privilege Manager console, is that, okay, yep. We don't have a policy for that. Only thing is I don't have a policy. You're going to come in now, and that should raise an eyebrow. Then we need to go and take a look at that and decide, do we want Sally to run this or don't we want her to run this? So we very quickly create policies based on publishers, websites, network shares, digital signatures, okay? So I can also then, to Brett's point, is very quickly, if I have that gold image, right? This is what we install on everybody's laptop. I can run a quick scan of it, create policies quickly based on that gold image. So anything outside that gold image now is going to go ahead and raise a flag within the Endpoint Privilege Manager.
What about, for example, unknown executables? Somebody's trying to run something and, an event comes across and, let's say you have the help desk actually running watching the events and an unknown executable comes across. How do they make the decision whether they should allow a user to do that or not?
Excellent. So yeah. So within Endpoint Privilege Manager, we have three actually built-in reputation advisors. We have our own. We have Virus Total, and the third's eluding me, but we also then integrate with Rapid7, Checkpoint, and a few others that are just kind of eluding me. We can go ahead and check that out later if we want. But the idea is that I'm getting those reputation scores. They're coming into EPM, and I can make an intelligent decision based on those scores. And we're going to do one better. Okay, I show this. I won't probably show it in my demo, but we have this idea of a timeline. And maybe you've done this where you download something, and you run that executable, and then perhaps it's doing its install thing, and it wants to install that free antivirus or free web accelerator, which to this day, I really don't know what that does. But I don't want it, okay? I know I don't want it. So what I have the ability to do is through EPM, I'm going to see that entire install, okay? I can pick and choose now what I want to allow or what I want to block. Next time someone runs that executable, we get what we need and we keep the garbage out.
So could this take the place of an application whitelisting product?
Most definitely.
Oh, great. So more back.
Yeah, and so we do have that concept of whitelisting, blacklist, and we have something else, gray listing, okay? The idea of gray listing is, because I know what I want, I know what I don't want, but this is new. We haven't seen it before. So I have the ability then to go ahead and engage with the user through a pop-up, right, where they can request access. They can go ahead and type in a justification. We get that justification. We can send that to your ticketing system, where then security can look at that and go, hey, does Brett really need access to this? Why has he downloaded this, etc.? These questions can be asked. Now, maybe then Brett is maybe more of a power user, developer type. You know, we don't want to get in his way. If he needs it, let's go ahead and let him have it. But we can then go and he can fill that request, and then we can allow him to proceed. The idea is that we're being notified. I'm being notified what he's doing, and if we're going, and if he has installed that or not. Okay, so I can either block it by getting that justification, or that justification and allow him to proceed. Either way, we're auditing all this information.
Awesome. Well, I think the natives are getting restless. Can we take a look at
Oh, are they?
see how it looks?
Okay. Let me go ahead and switch gears. Now I'm gonna go flip through a couple systems here, so I apologize if I make somebody seasick.
Before you,
I really wanted to get this.
demo, we do have a
Go ahead,
question.
Michael. Oh,
Before
excellent.
you jump into the demo, we got a question. So is there an integration with something like Palo Alto Wildfire for gray listed items? Granted, it might not be needed as Wildfire can detonate on any download.
The Palo Alto, I need to check. So yeah, I apologize for not having it off the top of my head. The list keeps growing, and quite frankly, sometimes it's just for me hard to keep up with. So I can go ahead and check that. We'll go ahead and get your information, and I'll drop you a note after this webinar.
Okay, I'll make a note of who it was.
Thanks, Michael. Okay, so let me go ahead and show my screen. And we're kind of gonna launch into some of the bad things that can happen to us, you know, where I have a local administrator, okay? So some of the bad things that can happen when I'm a local administrator is, quite frankly, you know, I can steal credentials. Credential theft, a huge problem. If I've gotten lazy over time, you know, we all manage a lot of passwords. And so I've started to use those password savers inside the browsers, okay? So what I have here, you can go and you can download this. You can go ahead and Google it and use it. It's what it does is it's Chrome Pass, and it goes ahead and finds that credential store, right? So number one, known file path. Okay, not too difficult. Number two, since it's a known file path, now I can find that credential store. Three, remember this is encrypted, so I've decrypted it, well, very quickly. And so now I have potentially a privileged credential, okay, that I can maybe I've stored my multi-factor admin console, some network consoles, right? Things that you may think aren't overly important, but now guess what? I have them just because I've kept local admin on the box, okay? You know, other things that then lead to that is if I get something really bad on my box, okay? Now what I have here is one of our attack tools here at CyberArk. And what I did before our demo is I just did a credential dump, okay? Just to see what I can find on the box. Remember, if you're a local admin, I have access to the local security, the LSAS, and I'm able to dump it. That is the first step into a larger attack, okay? And so I've just gone ahead and, with all honesty here, I'm using Mimikatz. This is just a little front end for it. If you don't know what Mimikatz is, it's just a tool to go ahead that is capable of dumping and grabbing those Kerberos hashes, okay? And so I've been able to dump some. And again, this all started with local administrator, okay? I was able to get on the box either through a spear phishing or a phishing campaign. I've put my payload on here, and now I've dug in like a tick on a dog, and basically I'm going to have my way with your machine and maybe with your domain and your network, okay? So then I'm able to go ahead with that information I found through that credential dump, okay? Now I can run another attack. Perhaps it's a golden ticket attack. Now, golden ticket attack is going to be where I'm looking for that highly privileged hash, right? I've just dumped them. So now I'm going to go through and see which ones I can use to actually then create a ticket myself, a Kerberos ticket, impersonate that privileged user, and then go throughout the environment, okay? And again, remember, this all started on the workstation. That's how most of the attacks start. So if we can remove that local admin, quite frankly, we're going a long way in preventing that. Oh, come on, there we go. And so I'm gonna go ahead and impersonate a user, right? Remember, I'm not creating a user, I'm impersonating a user where I found another user's privileged hash, a highly privileged user. So I'm just gonna type in some garbage. Because quite frankly, it doesn't make a difference. Okay, so I found that hash. I'm able to get to the domain controller. Now I'm requesting a Kerberos ticket. Okay, I found an NTLM hash as well, so I'm gonna go ahead and just use that for giggles. Now I'm gonna take all that, shove it in the memory, and I'm gonna go ahead and flip a reverse shell here in a second. Say that, come on.
Did you forget to do your pre-demo sacrifice?
No, I actually did. I think I did too many of them. Yeah, that's how it always is, right? And so here my little fans turning, okay? Let's see here. Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Just hit enter. Okay, and so now I'm gonna go ahead, I'm starting that process.
So the key point while we're waiting is, had the user in question here not had local admin rights, none of this would have been possible to start with.
Exactly. And so if I just do a host name here, you can see I'm on the domain controller. I'm in the Windows System 32 directory, have all sorts of access to all sorts of goodies here, okay? And so really what we're trying to do and trying to block is coming back here, right? Remember, this all started with me using a memory scraping tool, hitting the LSAS process and creating a dump. So with EPM engaged, right, removing that local admin right, also leveraging some our credential theft capabilities, now I don't have access to it. Okay, simple, pretty straightforward. Also, around those browsers, right, in this case, I have credential theft turned on for the Firefox browser. Well, guess what? I'm blocking that, as we can see in the lower right-hand corner, okay? So EPM is able to go ahead, and this is kind of the, I don't want to say the secret in the sauce, it's almost too simple in some respects, is that we're doing deep process inspection, okay? We know the process tree, if anything or anything like that kind of tries to inject itself into it, regardless if it's in the process tree, if it's in memory, etc., CyberArk EPM is going to go ahead and know that, figure that out, and block it. Okay, compared to some EDRs where, hey, I need to do some behavioral analytics. Don't get me wrong, that stuff is very cool. I dig it, but that can take time. Antiviruses, well, I need to update my antivirus with a DAT file occasionally, or a signature file, etc. Right? So anything that is maybe 0-day, well, maybe my antivirus hasn't seen it yet. Okay. So the idea here is with Endpoint Privilege Manager, I am protecting day one. Heck, we use it here at CyberArk. As soon as my laptop opens, not even connected to a network, right? The agent, we are agent-based, that agent is running and enforcing the CyberArk policies, okay? So enforcement day one. So now if we take that, go ahead.
So real quickly, you know, one of my pet peeves in presentations like this is the presenters have a tendency to talk about what it does, but not how it does it. And it really helps me to understand the how. Now, my understanding is, and quite simply, and correct me if I'm wrong, CyberArk intercepts process activation and compares what's happening to the policies and then grants the appropriate privileges to the process at process activation time so that that can happen. And then once the process exits, the privileges are removed. Is that basically correct, or am I off base there?
No, you're right on. Exactly right.
At its very basics, I mean, it's really a relatively simple process and fairly easy to understand from an OS perspective. It's really the big challenge is building all of the policies around, when you grant what privilege and how, and that's the beauty of the overall CyberArk process and or the platform, and the building of the policies. And you'll have to forgive me that what's the tool that the administrators sit in front of that the events come across? There's like a queue or something to that effect. I can't remember what you call it.
Yeah. So that's called our privilege management inbox. Now,
yes.
Yep. Can you see my screen still?
Yes.
Excellent. So something exciting that's coming out here in our next version, version 11.8, we're going to have what we call our unified inbox. Okay. 8 or 8.5, right around the corner. And the idea is that, to Brett's point, is that these events are going to be shuttled into this inbox, which is now loading. So Brett, back to your demo gods comment. During the whole time, I was actually refreshing my screen. It figures that now it wants me to log in. So,
of course.
Exactly. So what Brett's describing is what we have. We break it down into what we call inboxes, right? So when you think about admin accounts, admin access, admin level, we call that a privilege management inbox. So what's going to happen here is then those events, when someone tries to activate, tries to run, etc., right? Well, we're going to go ahead and get notified. Now we can also put this in what we call a default mode. So if my users are used to having that elevated privilege, right? Today, everybody has local admin, right? Well, we don't want to get in their way, right? Remember I said we want to learn their behavior. I can go ahead and select this to elevate, okay? Then they're going to have that look and feel that they are administrator, and we'll kind of look at that in a second. But what's going to happen is I'm going to start populating my inbox, right? I'm going to see their behavior. I'm going to see what they're doing. And then, quite frankly, and very easily, is maybe Wireshark is needed by my network guys. Right click, and I can go ahead and elevate, right? Allow them to run it. I can trust the source. Now, something that is unique about when I trust a source, okay, is again, if it is, say, we have all of our tools are from Wireshark Foundation or Microsoft or Google or whatever you're using in your environment. Okay, I can go ahead and trust that source. Now I've trusted 100 or so applications with the environment. Okay. If we want to get really granular on a policy, which I don't want to get into, it's interesting, but sometimes it's like watching paint dry. But what I do want to get into briefly then, is when we go ahead and start talking about creating policies. Okay, we've been talking removing local admin and elevating. Okay, well, what if I don't know if it needs to be elevated? I don't know. It wound up on my privilege management inbox, right? So most likely it does, but maybe there's an updater associated with it. Maybe there are certain parts of that application that maybe don't need to be elevated. For example, if you've ever run a browser in an elevated mode, you're leaving yourself wide open. Anything you quote unquote download, ActiveX, Flash, any of the other stuff now is actually running as administrator. So if I'm not sure about that, we have this option called Elevate Trusted Application if necessary. What this does, okay, is think of UAC, right, on your Windows laptops, right? Well, what we're doing in this mode is I'm really looking for UAC events. I can go ahead and suppress those events for my end users, but what CyberArk is going to do, the Endpoint Privilege Manager, is go, oh, okay, yeah, he does need to be elevated to run that. Let's give him that elevated necessary. Let's go ahead and elevate him, okay? Or the flip side is well, yeah, well, that UAC event's not coming through, so we don't need to elevate him. So we're able to go ahead and toggle the correct permissions if they need to be elevated or not for any particular application, for any user, etc.
So what I'm taking away from this is some of the pain we were discussing earlier as far as a rollout is concerned. You could conceivably set up CyberArk, deploy the agent, put it in monitoring mode, start populating the application inbox, and actually see what your users are doing without disrupting. Then once you get all these policies set up, you can start selectively enforcing them.
Exactly. And then along those same lines, right, we talked about whitelisting and blacklisting, right? We have application control, okay? Which of course is going to take a little bit of time now since I've been clicking on it all morning. But this again is going to be those items that do not need an admin right, okay? But remember what we talked about earlier. Ransomware runs in that user space. And now it means more because I have my glasses on, so I look smarter. What we're able to do is we're going to be able to pick up all these items, right? And so very easily then I can come through here, filter on ransomware or suspicious activities. Now I can start looking at, hey, what's been going on in the environment? What's ransomware? What's been going on here? So I can pick that out very easily, okay? And then go ahead and maybe I want to come in here and turn on our ransomware blocking mechanisms, okay? And we're going to take a look at that here in a second. However, though, before I get into that real quick, I just wanted to go back to Brett's point about making this easy, because this can be a laborious task, and that's why a lot of people stay away from it. So again, we have that idea of where I can go ahead and scan that gold image and pull back all the applications, files, etc., that are on that workstation, and then I start applying policies, again, by a publisher perhaps, okay? And I can really go ahead and knock this out.
So my understanding is, let's say you have an organization, let's say a software organization that develops their own software. You could even sign your own software and trust your own software as well.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. So when we start talking about that user space, application control, quite frankly, is that oftentimes, again, through some sort of attack, maybe I've got a nice email here I've sent. We did do an EPM training. This kind of gave me this was how we started it off. So when the users sat down in front of the VM that I provided, of course, right? The idea is that we're not going to, we don't want to do this on anybody we like, at least. Is that, we went to our email and we went ahead and opened it up, okay? And so this is going to go ahead and launch Excel. However, embedded in Excel, guess what? I had some ransomware in there, right? I had something else, okay? Well, then what we're able to do then is if we take a look at this, it's just not my files on my laptop, right? I have an HR file share. Maybe I have other file shares throughout my environment. So what I've started to do now is I'm creeping through the environment, encrypting all this good stuff, and I'm hosed, okay? And at least they were kind enough to leave me a nice little note with it. Say that, come on. There we go, okay? So remember, this is all happening in the user space. So we want to protect that as well. And so let's just kind of head and roll this back a little bit.
If only it were that easy.
We'd make $1 million. No, we would give it away for free because we want to help the community. There you go. Okay, so I've rolled everything back. Everything's nice and tidy. Now, again, if I come back to my EPM console, we have this idea of default policies. So we've gone through, we've collected the items that are the programs and things our end users need to access, what they're doing in the environment, okay? We've created some policies based on that. However, now it's the, hey, what if I haven't seen it before, right? I want that ongoing protection. So very easily I can come into the EPM console. We're going to go ahead and select restrict. And let's kind of dig in this real quick. So when we start talking about application control, again, user space, I have the ability to go ahead on any application, confine it to the workstation. Think of that. Even if it was infected, I've contained it, okay? So we can dictate, we can restrict access to internet, intranet, network shares, memory, other processes, right? So we want to go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and make this a little cuter maybe. We have different balloons, different dialogues. These are all customizable. So what I did there, I've stopped any bad things on my workstation from going out. Okay, they're contained. Next item, real quick, boom. Ransomware turned on. Let's go ahead and dig into this briefly. And it's real simple. So Brett was talking about whitelisting, okay? Trusting applications, trusting sources, trusting publishers, okay? Number one. So now that I'm trusting applications, well, now I can go ahead and protect file extensions that mean stuff to me or entire folders, okay? So really, we know what the bad guys want. They want that data. Well, let's go ahead and protect those specific items. You can add your own. We have a bunch that are out of the box. So when I hit save, now I'm protecting those files. And so real quickly, I'm going to go ahead and just update my agent. Just for edification, roughly the agent updates every minute and 30 seconds. Okay, you see I've gotten my updates. So if I come back here and go to my email, okay, though it says it got me, let's go back.
Multiple times.
And I think I went a little quick. Let's go back here because it did get me. This is the thing about a live cooking show, right? We're breaking some eggs. Okay. And what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and run that on another system real quick. Sorry for that. Okay. So it's the same concept. I have another application called Mr. Ransomware. Mr. Ransomware is actually looking at my document files here. Okay. Where if I go to run to encrypt the files, again, we're protecting certain file extensions, folders, entire files as well. And we're able to go ahead and then block that, okay?
Awesome.
So from removing local admins to protecting those items in the user space, Endpoint Privilege Manager is going to be able to go ahead and facilitate that. And now some more like kind of basic use cases around that then are, just allowing access, right? We talked about this earlier, Brett and I. And, if I have certain admin tasks that I need to do, to adjust the date and time, I need to be a local administrator, okay? So I have a policy inside EPM, right? There's my UAC shield. Well, I'm going to allow my end user to do it. I don't want to throw any pop-ups. I don't want to block them, okay? I want them to have that look and feel that they are still administrators. Okay? However, to my example before about blocking them from doing the bad things and shooting themselves in the foot, well, by all means, we want to block certain items as well, okay? And when we start talking about developers and files and USB keys, okay, we can also then lock those down. And so one of the things that I pulled this from a POC I did was I had developers that needed to get access to a host file. Okay, you need to be you need a local admin to do that. And so we're going to go ahead and open that. And by all means, I can go ahead and add a new host. And I'm able to save it.
Okay.
Not a problem. Yeah.
It's
However, just because I have
transparent.
access to the Etsy folder, Well, doesn't mean I have access to everything else in here. Okay, so kind of the same idea. Save. Well, now it's asking me to save it somewhere else because I don't have access. You want to save it in documents instead because I don't have access to that folder. And we can take that same scenario down to services, USB keys, where we can go ahead and set those policies and permissions.
So
Hey guys, we're getting about 10 minutes out. I do want to make sure there is a question that somebody's asked specifically about deployment. So the question is, once you've got EPM deployed, do you have to remove the user from the local administrator group, or does the agent overwrite that or lock it down?
Like where your head is. So I was going to go ahead and pop it open, but if we come back to our EPM console, we're able to go ahead and automatically remove those administrators. Okay, so I can remove local administrators. So I have that turned on. Now you cannot remove the built-in account, so I recommend disabling it or renaming it. But yes, we can remove those.
Okay, sorry, I just wanted to get that in before we get too close to the end here.
Yeah, one quick question there on your elevation instance. Let's say, especially in your specific instance you demonstrated, let's say for some reason the developer does need to edit the services file just this once. How is that handled?
Excellent. So we have the idea of just in time. Okay, so I'm able to go ahead and give, they can go ahead and get a prompt, and or they can go ahead and request admin privileges. Okay, so this would give them access to the workstation, the entire workstation for a set period of time, or, right, I fill in this request, it comes back to my EPM console, where now that event that event's going to pop in one of my inboxes, okay? And what I'm able to do then, and we'll just go ahead and pick one. Yeah, that looks good. I can get that service in your example that they're trying to hit, and I can go ahead and create a just-in-time policy though, but I can get extremely specific now. Okay, so I went from access to everything to now I've popped open our advanced policy template where I can go ahead and then set those permissions, okay, and then give them access again for a particular period of time, but just for that service.
Actually, before you click there, one of the things I would like to point out is the level of granularity you have, like time, what groups they're members of, et cetera, in the policy. So there's a lot of flexibility there.
Exactly. And this is sometimes why depending on the audience, I show a little bit. Sometimes it puts people to sleep. But to Brett's point, besides computers and sets, we also have an idea of computer sets within inside EPM. What's great about that? Macs, right? How many Macs are going to be in my domain, right? So we can actually group computers that are outside of it and leverage that group again for policy creation purposes. And then access, remember we talked about access earlier, but this is where I can dictate what that application can touch, right? Intranets, if it can go out, network shares, memory, and then to Brett's point, I can go ahead and put a time bomb on it if I'm allowed to say that. Something else cool, Brett, that I've been leveraging a lot lately, and I wish they would rename it, but just for y'all, it's under various. So again, I'm able to go ahead and allow a policy to run if I'm on my VPN, right, or not on my VPN. Yeah, if I'm at Starbucks, right, maybe I want to check that VPN connection to make sure you can hit maybe a certain host, URL, domain controller. And what I've done for Macs is, maybe I have a script run when they log in, when they first boot, and depending on the output, now I'm going to go ahead and allow them to access that particular application.
Awesome.
So we have about 5 minutes left. I want to turn it back over to Brett, Michael, and for any comments and also any questions we have from folks.
Yeah, we don't have any more questions. I think the demo did spur a couple, so they wanted to see that. So I appreciate those questions. Brett, you got any closing comments on the whole EPM issue?
I think we've touched on pretty much all of the important things, but I think the key takeaway here is that obviously local admin is a threat as far as what could end up happening, especially with the weakest link in your overall security infrastructure, your end user. Take away local admin, you take away that piece of it, but it's not an easy thing to do. Products like CyberArk EPM provide the means to go out, assess the environment, see what's happening without being disruptive with like the privilege management inbox, looking at the applications that are being used by your end users, see what needs to be done, what shouldn't be done, with the strength of the policies, with the ability to, say, okay, fine, something signed by Microsoft or something signed by me, just go ahead and allow it, it's fine. But things that we don't know, just run in user mode or even catch ransomware. So, and then once you have that built and you start rolling it out, you start with small groups, do the testing, get the policies built up, enable enforcement, see how it works, and just keep rolling it out further and further within the organization. It doesn't have to be a big bang. It doesn't have to be disruptive. You can roll this out in an incremental process.
Thanks, Brett. So we do have another question. If this is powered by an agent, what kind of system resources does it take to operate?
Less than 1%. I can get you some extreme detail on that. But yeah, it's less than 1%. It's extremely lightweight. So yeah, I guess I'll go ahead.
Real quickly to that point, once you have the agent rolled out, the agent can then be managed through CyberArk EPM. So you don't have to mess with the whole, oh no, I have another agent I have to manage within the organization.
Exactly.
Yep. And Brett, I think you got key points on EPM in general. I mean, that has been a daunting factor for a lot of people in setting up and in taking admin privileges away is just how do I plan it? How do I see what's going to happen when I do it? With EPM, you're getting the ability to kind of lock that or see what that effect's going to be prior to that.
Yes, and we can help with that as well.
Absolutely. Well, guys, we're right up close to the end of the hour, so I don't see any other questions other than from JR. JR will I can get back to you on that. Specifically, I can ask your account manager to help you with that. So that's I can work on that for you. So if there's no other questions, I think, guys, we're going to end this. I'll finish up by saying, first of all, Mike, thank you very much for joining us. Greatly appreciate the partnership with CyberArk and everything you guys do and the great tech that you put out there. So thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Yep. Brett, thanks for the time you put into this. Also out there, I think we'll put this in one of the links or when we send this out, everybody, but Brett wrote a series of blog posts and then we created a white paper on EPM. So if you want to get to dig into that a little bit more with Brett's thoughts and how that works, please, we'll try to include that link in what we send out after this is over. So Brett, thank you very much for putting all this together as well.
Thank you for the time.
Yep. So last housekeeping again, if you did not get your gift card for lunch, please check your spam folder and let Lauren know if you don't see that. We will be sending the questionnaire out. Along with that questionnaire will be, if you answer that, you get a chance to be in drawing, or you get into a drawing for a chance at a $100 gift card. And that really helps us get some information on how we could do better on these and lets us know if you're interested in talking any further. We will send the video link out, and then I'll ask Lauren's on here, please send the white paper link out. I think we were planning on doing that anyway. So you'll be able to see Brett's deeper thoughts into the subject. Other than that, thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate it. And we will see you on the next webinar. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.